Hey, it's Joe Bartle. We're going over the 4 receivers you need to start here in Week 9. I'm going to start first with the guy that I think everyone needs to be playing, but clearly the message has not gotten across to everyone. I try to answer as many questions as possible, but I had a lot of questions this week about do you play Nico Collins or this guy or whatever else. How is that happening? Nico Collins is always going to be in my starting lineup so long as he's healthy, but I guess it's just worth reiterating to everyone, you need to be playing him this week and moving forward. No Pat Surtain for the Broncos makes this a much easier matchup. And yes, the Texans' offensive line has struggled. Nick Bonito is one of the more underrated pass rushers in the entire NFL. I think the Broncos will be able to put pressure on CJ Stroud. But this offense has been going really well. And when it has went well, Nico Collins is typically a part of that equation. That's the reason he was drafted in the late first round this past year. And I think it's one of the reasons he needs to be in your starting lineups moving forward. He is going to get more volume as the season progresses, and CJ Stroud will always have Nico Collins be a factor, or the offensive scheme will have Nico Collins be an offensive factor. I would get so mad at myself. This is a Joe Bartle problem. If I played somebody else over Nico Collins and he gets 22 points on my bench, that is overthinking things to the max, and I think too many people are doing that right now with the Texans offense. I'd rather play Nico Collins over Devontae Adams, over DK Metcalf, over Jalen Waddle. He is very, very clearly, at minimum, a wide receiver 2 for me this week. The creation of this video segment was basically, the idea was to give comfort to people who overdrafted a bunch of these guys, like the A.J. Browns, T. Higgins. We've made that joke before, right? This has been the T. Higgins-Mendoza line that more or less has been the catalyst for the creation of this video segment. I think right now DJ Moore is probably in a different realm than that. Really, truly have no idea why DJ Moore is struggling to the extent that he is. Like, think about back when DJ Moore was the Panthers or many of the other bad quarterback situations he's been in. He's still at minimum been an 1,000 or 1,100 yard receiver every single year of his career. Last year, I was able to wave it away because Matt Eberflus was just that dumb and Caleb Williams was just that raw. What is happening this year? How can it be this hard to have a quality receiver, a Pro Bowl talented receiver who the Bears invested in with that contract extension that we saw on Hard Knocks a couple of years ago, not get DJ Moore involved in the offense? It remains just frustrating to me that DJ Moore can't be a bigger factor. Despite all that, I think you still have to play DJ Moore this week. Now, it might change with the Bengals likely playing Jake Browning at quarterback. We'll have to see what the status of Joe Flacco is, but I assume there will be offense on both sides of the ball. The Bengals will be scoring, the Bears will be scoring. In that scenario, it can still be Roma Dunze and DeAndre Swift doing things, and maybe Colston Loveland has a good game, but DJ Moore has to be a factor if there's going to be anywhere in the range of the total that we saw in Vegas, which was pushing close to 50 points as of this recording. I think DJ Moore is going to be a critical part of this offense this week. And maybe there's a sell high window then for DJ Moore to be a fantasy factor for you rest of season, meaning you can have him off your roster. I'd rather play DJ Moore over Keenan Allen. I'd rather play him over Khalil Shakir. I'd rather play DJ Moore over Jameson Williams and probably Xavier Worthy too, although that one's kind of a fringe spot. We are betting that the Bears offense will be functioning. And in that scenario, DJ Moore, I think, has to be in the range of, let's just say, 4 catches, 75 yards, something similar to what we saw last week as well, too. So DJ Moore, going to be in my starting lineup in most scenarios. Going down to a bit more of the fringy options, I think Quentin Johnston, who has just 6 catches and 70 receiving yards and 1 touchdown over the past 4 games. That was combined, including one where he was injured. Quentin Johnston's obviously been bad, but I think he's a good enough play for this week. The Chargers have had significant injuries to the offensive line. It hasn't been understated on the RotoWire channel. We've talked a lot on the Waiver podcast and the weekly rankings with Jim Coventry that I do in the RotoWire YouTube channel. We've mentioned this before at RotoWire that the Chargers offensive line has hurt and therefore Oronde Gadsden or Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey would benefit. That has been true. We saw last Thursday, Joe Alt gets back, the offense gets a lot better. The annihilation of the Vikings was a little bit weird. I thought the Vikings would present more issues, but overall, that offense is going to get better and trend back to what we saw at the beginning of the season when the offensive line injuries dissipate. And in that regard, I think Quentin Johnston's going to benefit. He was the one guy that gets phased out when you have to get the ball quick. You can't have the deep shot plays or the deep crosser routes that Quentin Johnston was thriving in the first couple weeks. Looking at the next 4 teams, Titans this week, Steelers, Jaguars, Raiders, those are all top 10 in terms of allowing fantasy points to receivers, and it's going to be a really nice cushion and window where if you're not selling Johnston high on one of those games, you can at least say before the fantasy playoffs, Johnston will have got me to a certain point. And I think, again, from the deep ball perspective, Johnston is going to have that opportunity. Now, maybe you could argue that the Chargers, who at one point early in the week were 10-point favorites over the Titans, despite this being in Tennessee, if the Chargers are to reach that level, you would say Johnston's been phased out of the offense. I always disagree. If the team is going to win by 2 scores, it's because the offense did the things they were supposed to do just within 3 quarters. Otherwise, the game is competitive. So to me, I'm playing Johnston with the idea he is going to be a part of that offense, or they'll have attrition enough in that game where Johnston's going to see some volume against a bad defense that doesn't have its best player in Jeffrey Simmons. So I'm playing Quentin Johnston over any of the Packers receivers. I'll play him over Jameson Williams. I'll play him over Rashid Shaheed. And yes, I'm going to play Quentin Johnston over Travis Hunter, who had 1 good game all year. I'm not overreacting to that situation. The final name I wanted to mention, and I think is going to be one that's really interesting to monitor the rest of the season, is Chimere Dike, the 4th-round rookie for the Titans. DK has 11 catches, 163 yards, and a touchdown over the past 2 weeks. Now, that has coincided with Calvin Ridley out, but you could make an argument that the Titans sitting where they are right now in the standings, likely going to have another top 5 pick entering this year. Let's see what you have out of these younger players. If it's not trading Calvin Ridley outright before the trade deadline next Tuesday, maybe DK and Io Manor just get more involved as the season progresses. That doesn't hurt Calvin Ridley's contract. It doesn't hurt the Titans to see what they have out of their rookie. Why wouldn't you prioritize one of the few bright young spots on the team that has had such a miserable year? DK has just had too many consequential moments with this offense over the past 2 weeks in a season that has been absolute despair for me to think that they're going to completely get rid of DK and his role if and when Calvin Ridley comes back healthy. The Chargers are also gettable in terms of explosive plays, and in the event that the game script goes completely AWR and the Titans are down by multiple scores entering the second half, that also benefits DK and probably makes DK one of the more valuable guys from a waiver wire perspective, given we have to assume the Titans are going to be struggling a lot this season. I'll play DK over Cooper Kupp. I'll play Chimere Dike over Darnell Mooney, Troy Franklin, Kayshon Boutte. A lot of these wide receiver 3 options that we've discussed in waiver wire articles or shows the past couple weeks, DK rises above that, and I think rest of season becomes one of those guys as a deeper league flex play or wide receiver 3 that I feel very comfortable with moving forward.